We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
Looks like the rain has gone.
Blessings, blessings, blessings all, and thank you for joining the Mankind Podcast. This podcast is here to break the mold, to prove that there's more than one way to be a man. I am one of your hosts, Paul Newell, and this podcast episode I've been looking forward to quite some time. I had the opportunity to sit down with a man I hold in high regard, Eldra Jackson III. For those that have yet to know who Eldra Jackson III is, I'm about to tell you. He is one of the co-executive directors of the Inside Circle. And the Inside Circle is an organization that is driven by community and education and evolution to support men that have either been in the prison system or in danger of going in the prison system, and support and support them in creating new ways of being. So that there's a reduction in recidivism and these men have a new way of living life rather than going to the old things that they're used to. Eldra has been a powerful force in the movement for Inside Circle and for prison reform. And if you had the opportunity to see the documentary The Work, then you know who my man Eldra is. You know him. The scene, one of my favorite scenes in this documentary is a space where Eldra really connects with a young man that has given up all hope. And when I saw that documentary piece, it shifted my game. It shifted my perspective completely on the work that gets done in these circles. And what really resonates with me in this article, or rather not in this article, in this podcast session with Eldra, after I got to listen to it, I am digging his rawness and the realness of this interview. And I don't know, I call it an interview. I call this more of a conversation because, we go into what this term, the work, really is. And at the time when Eldra and I had this conversation, I had just come off of staffing an All Kings weekend, which is where I first met Eldra in person. And I was in this very reflective place of thinking about what it means to heal a wound versus reveal the strengths of a wound and what gets activated from that wound. So we got to chop it up a little bit about that. We got to chop it up a little bit about rehabilitation. We got to chop it up a little bit about what it means to do the work. We got to talk a little bit about integration. We got to talk a little bit about a whole lot of things. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to listen in on this too. So without any further ado, here is the conversation with my guy, Eldra Jackson III. Enjoy. I have a guest today, my man Eldra Jackson III. If this is the first time that you're hearing the Mankind Podcast, thank you for joining and thank you for listening. If you're a person that's listening on a regular basis, this podcast today means a lot to me personally because I have taken on some working with the organization All Kings, which was co-founded by some of my MKP brothers. And some of my MKP brothers, one of my MKP brothers in particular, created a documentary called The Work. And if you have yet to see The Work, I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. Now, The Work is about doing men's work. And my guests mentioned about men's work versus human work in a recent in a podcast from last year. So I'm going to call what he does human work because he's helping a population that is perceived by most of our population as inhuman, as animals, as unworthy. So today I get to chop it up with my man Eldra. Last time I saw him was actually on an All Kings weekend. He is one of these gentlemen that I admire from a distance. And like when I finally got to meet him in person, seeing him on the big screen, I was like, ah, la, 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 la. I think I bit off all my nails when I was talking to you at the threshold. Maybe afterwards. But and I feel myself right now. I got a little bit of anxiety, right, or nervousness, hoping that I hit all the points. And really, I'm gonna let that go. So I'm going to let that go. So I want to take the time to introduce Eldra and then bring his voice to the podcast. Before I do that, I want to say, give you some insight on Eldra. Eldra is a co-director of the co-executive director, my apologies, of the Inside Circle. He's also a host of the Inside Circle podcast. And if you're wondering, what the heck is Inside Circle? Well, I'm glad you asked. The Inside Circle is a nonprofit organization that's focused on reducing recidivism. So they're doing that through education, through advocacy, through teaching in these weekends that they host in prisons to support men within the prison walls to be and shift their perceptions to do something differently. He's a writer, he's a speaker, he's got a great TED talk that talks about the impact of masculinity. And he, in my opinion, Eldra, you are a beacon of shift. You're a beacon of accountability, man. You're a beacon of depth, man. You're a beacon of truth, man. I remember looking in your eyes the first time. It was like you have a depth and soul in your eyes that to me is timeless. So being able to sit here with you is, I'm tip top right now. So listen, everyone, I want to introduce you to my friend, guest to the Mankind Podcast show, Eldra Jackson III. Eldra, welcome, brother.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me, man. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today.
Oh, man, blessings. It's an honor and pleasure for me as well, man. So listen, I want to, Eldra, in that introduction, is there anything that you want to add in relation to, in regards to what you're doing now? Or are there any updates on how you're showing up in the world, how you're putting out the goodies?
Certainly. You mentioned the focus and us trying to move this focus from one of strictly men's work and it being interpreted or personified as men's work. Yeah, that's the genesis, and it evolving into human work. We serve in prison, of course. That's where we were born. That's where the heart is. And when I think about human work and where we're at and what we're doing, we're seeking to reach out and touch all parts of humanity. We're working with men and young men and young boys inside of correctional facilities. We're in high schools now. We're holding community events for anybody who identifies as a human being. It doesn't matter, what gender or non-gender they identify as. We're working in corporations with CEOs and teams. This really is human work.
Blessings, man, blessings. And when I saw your work in the work, I remember there was a scene that you had with a young man that was struggling and didn't want to live. And I remember that was like, I got really emotional when I saw that, man, because it was like, there was this look in his eye, like he had yet to believe he was even worthy of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm curious, man, when you're in these environments and you're doing the education and advocacy, what are the ways, first for you, that you started to shift that conversation of worthiness inside? And then how are you helping other men to shift, or other people to shift that as well?
Well, it started for me with looking at my own wounds, looking at myself and developing a different relationship. First of all, with those wounds, because in being able to do that helped to begin to develop a different narrative within myself about who I was. And once that narrative changed, that informs who I think other people are. So for me, that was where it started. And so continuing to do this work and continuing to sit with other people, I'm still just doing my own work. I just happen to do it sitting in circle with other folks. And they get in where they fit in. I get out on the carpet and do my work and invite others to get out onto the carpet and do their own personal work. You bring up so many points I want to just touch in on. First, that first point about developing a different relationship. It's like when you said that, I was thinking of that. Once we change the way we see things change, right? And I think that's really, really resonant, especially when it talks to that healing piece
and being able to transition that, right? You also mentioned another thing, which I think is really important for men that are listening to this, or like you said, whichever gender, however you identify, this human work is for everyone, right? So one of the things I heard you say is that support, right? That spot of having a team or having that support in the circle. And when you're supporting, you're doing your work.
Yeah.
And when you say that, because I want to be free of making assumptions. So can you give a little bit more depth, or like, can you give me some insight on what that means? Like when you're doing your work, or how that environment comes up for you?
Sure. When first of all, it starts, with me doing my own work, and what that looks like for me is my being willing to look into the mirror and see where, first of all, how I'm showing up in all of the different aspects and arenas of my life. How am I showing up?
Yeah.
And am I showing up in a way that I want to show up?
Right.
And if so, how can I foster supporting to continue that and develop that so it gets even or grows even deeper? And
Right.
if I'm not showing up in the way in which I want to, what, if anything, am I willing to do about that? Maybe I'm willing to do something about it. Maybe I'm not.
Right.
But I am at a place in my life where I want to take responsibility of at least looking at it and then making a conscious choice about, am I going to work on this or not? If
Right.
I am, cool. If I choose to, I like to use the phrase, sit in my shitty diaper, then that's cool too. But I'm conscious and aware that this is what I'm doing.
Oh, that's a classic. Shit in that city diaper stink. But listen, some of these things that come up, man, like I'm like thinking for myself, going through these weekends, like, man, a man could say something that's doing his work in the circle and it touches me. I'm like, oh, junk. So that work is real, man, and it's potent. That's why I'm seeing the work that you have done and you continue to do. I applaud you, and I'm so happy that there are more beings doing the work that you're doing, because we're sitting here talking about, like, being able to change the way that we see things. And I think that, for me anyway, I take for granted the difficulty that can be sometimes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because, like, I'm looking at my own path, like you just mentioned, like, hey, how am I doing things? Like, how am I really seeing, like, my patterns, like how I show up? And that piece right there that I found over the weekend and in other weekends is that there can be this resistance to looking at how I'm showing up, mm-hmm. right? Because there is this, I've been in this space of this victim mentality, like, you did this, you did this, you did this. And I'm curious, like, for you working in the prison population, how, like, well, first of all, did you experience, like, a lot of these men in this victim state? And if so, like, how did you help support them transition out of that?
That's a good question. And I meet people in all, aspects of this work who, might have some sort of connection to, what we call the victim mentality or victimhood. Yeah. And I don't know that I necessarily support or teach them about that or around that. I just do my own work and utilize myself as a prime example, because that's what I got experience about. And that's what I'm an expert in. I'm an expert in me. I'm not an expert in anything but me.
Right.
And
right.
so
right.
when I think about myself and coming from a place of victimhood or victim mentality and being, a part of the justice system, yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I can point at and be like, this is wrong and this is torture and they do this wrong and they need to change this and they need to change that. And the flip side of that coin is, what is my responsibility? For me, it always comes back to that. The question of, what is my responsibility in this situation? Okay, they got me stripped down, butt naked. I'm in a cell by myself that has nothing but a drain in the middle of the floor, and they hosing me down with fire hoses. What is my part in this? And when I ask myself, what is my part in this? It comes down to a series of more questions. Okay, well, how did I wind up here?
Speaking.
Okay,
man.
I was in prison. I am in prison, but now I'm in the hole. What did I do to wind up in the hole? What's my responsibility in this? And then extrapolating for there, how did I wind up in prison? Because are there some folks in prison that are falsely convicted, falsely accused, and falsely convicted? Yes, most certainly there are. That is not the greater percentage.
Right.
The greater percentage of individuals are guilty of something. And I was one of those individuals who was absolutely guilty of everything that they charged me for, tried me of, and convicted me for. So what is my responsibility? Why am I even in this situation? How was I showing up in the world, in my community, in my family, or not showing up that landed me in a position to even know from personal experience how fucked up the prison system is? Because I wasn't born in the prison industrial complex.
Right.
I entered that based on choices that I made. I entered it based on things, you know, that I was doing in the community, and then choices that I continued to make once I stepped into the system. So what's my part? What's my role? If I start there, that's what I can control.
Yeah.
I can't control any external factors. I can control that. I can deal with that. I can work with that.
Right. Right. And you, so, and what I'm hearing you say, which is one of the key points I'm getting out of that, is the choice, right? Is like, I have a choice. And I see that is like, from my experience, we're doing work with all kings, right? And even when, like, I taught yoga in county jails for a couple of years in New Jersey, and getting to know these men and like getting to know their story and like, you know, taking them through meditation and hearing their feedback. A lot of these men, when it came to really diving into meditation and going back to that space, like the journeying, there was this, I'm finding there's a lot of these wounds within that like 0 to 10, 11 phase that create this like ripple of impact of this victimhood. And then also of this aggressive warrior mentality, right? And I want to make a slight transition, because like I want to talk about the heal versus reveal. Before I do that though, the thing I wanted to check in with you on is, when we're looking at like that starting phase, or that developing phase, when you talk choice, one of the things I appreciated how you facilitate is you take it back, and from what I can remember, you take it back and then have them see things from a different way, like the choices. Like, here's good mom or dad, here's bad mom or dad, right? And there's this energy I'm finding, like, especially for men of color, like regardless if they're in the prison system or not, there is like a dad wound, or also there's a mom wound, because like, oh, well, I look like my dad, my mom beat the shit out of me. You know what I mean? My mom swept me in the freaking shower. Like, you know, all these things that happen, and then they became a victim. Now, last part about this is, what I'm finding is there is like that aggressive warrior. I start to get men to shift. It's like, what if that warrior is protecting something so precious that they think they have to be aggressive to protect it, right? And I'm curious for you, is like, how, especially when it comes back to that phase of going to the inner child, right?
Yeah.
That's bringing up vulnerability. So in this spaces where you're working with men in the prison system, what are the ways that you have them step into that, or be in that space and be vulnerable, yet still be able to go out into the yard and maintain that defense? Like, what are the ways that you can, like, men, like, actually for you, like, how did that work for you, man? Because you went through this transformation your own to get to here.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to a simple word, and that word and practice is integration. So how do I integrate? How do I, number one, learn and begin to practice vulnerability? And then what does that look like to integrate that wisely into my life? Because it's one thing to be open in a prison setting, or in any space where physically it may not be safe to show that and reveal that at all times. That's not just in prison, that's in the world. It's not safe to always show everybody your soft underbelly. So I also have to tap into my wisdom as well. Once I begin to practice this and take care of myself. You know, one thing that we always encourage folks and invite folks to do in Circle is to, number one, above all self, practice the choice and the responsibility of self-care.
Mm.
I am nobody's doctor. I'm nobody's psychologist. I'm nobody's therapist. And I have 2 young children in my household that I'm responsible for taking care of.
Right.
You, sir, are responsible for taking care of yourself and asking for the support that you need to make certain that you can do that if you need some support in that. So, when we're inside, the invitation is to always tap into your own innate wisdom that exists and measure, use that sage that lives within us all to know when to share that with the rest of the world, because the rest of the world, quite frankly and sadly, is not always worthy of that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. They're sometimes it's like they're not always worthy and they're not always ready.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, wait, hold on. Who are you? And this is the thing. I really appreciate you saying this, because I think I'm like, I guess I'm part woo-woo guy. Like, I believe in chakras and energy systems and vibrations and frequencies and stuff. And when you talk about that, that self-care component, right? And I'm going to go back to the wisdom in a second. I'm finding like that self-care component comes back to a worthiness piece too. And that integration is so important because, and I'm wondering if it's the same for you. Are you finding that most men have no idea what that means, like self-care?
No idea at all. No idea at all. And you started this off, speaking to the archetype of the warrior.
Yeah.
That's just one aspect. If we're talking about, how do I integrate the healthy aspects of the warrior? How am I also integrating the healthy aspect of my magician as well? Because the magician is how I'm going to tap into that sage part of myself. Yes. That recognizes the self-care. Oftentimes, and I'm as a Black man speaking to another Black man, culturally, self-care is not something that we necessarily support each other around learning and teaching one another around, because I was a child of the 70s, a baby of the 70s, and I remember growing up in a household, and just culturally, when people talked about therapy and therapists and getting mental health and all of that was shit for white folks. We Black, we ain't got time for that. We too busy trying to catch up. Take your ass to work, put some bread and meat on the table. We ain't got time to be crazy. There ain't no room for that. So there's a stigma that goes with mental health, that goes with emotional health, that goes with self-care, because we don't make the time for it. We don't, it's not a part, it has not been up to this point, a part of the culture with our younger folks, with teaching them and modeling for them that that's a part of being a whole, healthy, rounded human being. First and foremost, taking care of self. So I find that it's difficult to support folks with integrating that into their program.
And I'm curious, right? Like, oh man, so much there. Damn. Like, I'm like, ooh, where do I want to go? But like, when you say self-care, the first thing I can automatically go to is physical. And I heard you mention before about the therapy aspect of it. Like, that's something I recently started going back to. So can you share with us, like, what are some other aspects that are available in relation to self-care for a person? Like, we talked physical, like, what else would you?
Of course, the physical is something I think that all people can identify with, and it's acceptable. It's mainstream. There's a mental component. There's an emotional component, because again, I'll say this, and this is true for me, and it's been true for every human being that I've ever worked with. The way that I feel can dictate the way that I think, and the way that I think will dictate the way that I act. So if those things are not in harmony, if those things are not working together, and if I'm not being proactive about my emotional well-being and my mental well-being, I'm gonna do some apeshit crazy stuff. I've done that. This is not projection. History has proven that that's how I'll show up, and millions of other human beings on the face of this world will show up.
It's so true, man. It's so true. And I want to give a quick example before I move into this wisdom piece. So when you talk about the emotion, I had an example of this a couple of years ago. Actually, probably I had the realization a couple years ago. 2 years ago, I had both of my hips replaced, right? And before that, I was in a lot of pain, man. Like, and I did a great job of masking, put that mask on, like, yeah, I'm fine. I can't walk, I'm in pain. Shit. Right. So I would cover this up. And like there were situations with my oldest son, like I would get super freaking pissed at him a lot. And after I got my hip surgery, I was going through physical therapy and we were kicking a soccer ball around. And it brought me back, Eldra, to when I was playing with my oldest son. And he started learning how to play soccer. And I was in the backyard with my bad fucked up hips. And then like he kicked it out and I blew up at him.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing, man? Why are you kicking it over there? And he's like, and I was in that space, Eldra, where I was like, I'm still pissed, right? Because I'm in pain, I'm angry, I'm sad because I want to play with them, but like I'm in this emotion. And then because I had yet to know how to express it, or because I failed to integrate a lot of things I was learning, pow, I blow up at him. So now I'm in physical therapy and I'm kicking this soccer ball around. And then I start crying. My physical therapist is like, are you in pain? I'm like, nah, man, I just realized I was in so much pain. I was blowing up at my son on a regular basis, man. Blowing up at him, angering him. And like, this is a thing when we talk about this self-care, because especially when we talk about people of color, that's something like you mentioned, that's out of the stratosphere. It's like you said, like, look, you better put some food on the table. That's just for white folks. And like, you know what? I don't have money or time for that bullshit. Like, yo, go get me some E&J. Yo, listen, what we got right here? Is that some indica? You know what I mean? Like, and that's our way of managing it. And it's more covering the wound rather than addressing it. You know what I mean? So I wanted to give that because, like, I think men, well, if they have never been in the prison system, what you're talking about applies in so many freaking areas of life.
Yep. So
many areas. So I want to touch on, and I'm so happy we're talking about this because I got a gripe with like a lot of the wellness community, right? And especially when it comes to this, because now it's like, now this work is out there more. So now I'm personally seeing like a lot of these weekends and like, okay, yeah, we're going to heal, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things you hit on something that I fail to hear a lot of, integration. I see a lot of teaching. Get this program. Yet there fails to be integration and there fails to be practice of discernment. Right. And one of the things like I want to touch base with you on is this concept of what I also see a lot in this community is the heal. We got to heal the wound, right? We got to heal the wound. And I judge that there's a collective push to wound worship. Worship that wound. How did it make you feel? Oh, stay in there. And I'm curious for you, like first of all, what's the difference between healing a wound and revealing the gift a wound has for you?
It's a huge difference. And I'll say this, I think that a lot of people, when you use that word, when you use the terminology, and I hear it a lot, heal the wound. What does that mean? What the fuck does that even mean?
Thank you. Let's talk it. Yep.
I don't know what that means.
Right.
What the language that I like to use is developing a different relationship with the wound.
I like that.
Because I think that a lot of people, language is super, super important and it can be very, very powerful. And if I'm talking to folks or if I'm dealing from a paradigm of heal the wound, and then somebody entrusts me to support them in walking back into that wound, and then they come out of that and then look to integrate into their life. Okay, well, I've identified the wound, I've walked back into it, and then I come back out on the other side. Why do I still feel what I feel?
Right.
Why do I still, and why am I still having these issues that I'm having? Now this work is snake oil, I'm a charlatan, and all of these other things. I'd never said heal the wound.
Right.
What I said was there's an opportunity to develop a different relationship with the wound. And in me developing a different relationship with my wound, there's an opportunity for me to identify the medicine or the gold that lies within that wound or right next to that wound. So then we go back to the power of choice. Now I have the ability and I have been empowered to make a different choice around the wound when the wound or symptoms of the wound come up, now I am more equipped to identify that this is where this is coming from. And I also know where the medicine lies in connection to that wound. So that is what is revealed for me in going back into that wound.
Yes, bro.
What medicine lies there? So when I have that medicine, now I am empowered to move into the world from the place of that wound or in relationship with that wound, utilizing my power in medicine that is born from that wound.
And when you say medicine, I appreciate your choice of words and how you talk about the wound, developing a different view of it, because I think that brings into play what you were talking about before, the wisdom there. Because just for people that are hearing the word medicine, especially because we're talking about what does this mean, right? Can you share for you, what does the word medicine mean? Like how do you relate to that word in regards to what you do?
In regards to what I do when I'm speaking about medicine, especially in relationship to wounds. Okay, so I don't want to be all esoteric and theoretical about it. When I am showing up as not my best, when I'm showing up disconnected from other human beings, when I'm going through the world with that fuck everybody and everything attitude, when I'm being completely selfish and I don't care about you and what you got going on, you're nothing but an impediment in front of me to be knocked down. That mindset and that mentality was born as a result of childhood trauma. That is me living from the victimhood of my wound. Doing this work, I was supported by individuals in circle to be able to go back and develop a different relationship with that trauma, with that wound. And so now, more often than not, I choose to try to step into my medicine and come at the world and relate to the world and other people from that place. And what my medicine is one of a bridge builder, is one of connecting with other human beings. It's one of empathy. It's one of compassion. So laying right next to that, I don't give a fuck about you, is that I love you and want the best for you. It's in the same space, but I got a choice to live from the wound of I don't give a fuck because I've been hurt, or to come from that I love you and I see the light in you just because.
Damn. Woo, child. So, oh man. Okay, so thank you for that. Because as you're saying that, like, I'm thinking of just this looking at this wound differently, right? I'm thinking of relationships and abandonment, right? In my situation, like I've like energetic, and I know we're going to do our best to stay low esoteric, and we may go high. I don't know. We might. You know what I'm saying? So this is like when I see that, like, I'm thinking of the relationship piece, right? And I'm working through a relationship situation where I'm integrating the medicine from my thinking I was abandoned.
I hope you're enjoying the Mankind Podcast. The Mankind Project supports all kinds of men with men's groups and programs aimed at building self-awareness, improving relationships, and upping your game. If you're willing to take the next step and you're a man of color, check out the men's work for BIPOC men. Find out more in the show notes.
And I really enjoy what you said about seeing it a different view. It's like respect. I'm going to see this again, like through new eyes. Like, so it's like, okay, I'm going to take this out of it. Like, did you ever do the Omega Point program, Bill Wick?
Yes.
Oh, so live God. So I did that last year, right? And it was fascinating for me because, like, I was able to uncover a lot of these things like I had blocked out from my youth, like before 5 years old. And the really interesting thing was, like, as I started to uncover those and be able to step outside of it and then be able to go in as this energy and heal myself, right? Then all of a sudden I was able to see things differently. And I noticed, like, things in my life shifted, right? And when things in my life shifted, I found that there was a pull there was a strong energetic pull pulling me back into what I know. Right. So like in that pull, especially for men that do this work, women that do this work, however you identify that do this work, when we're looking and we're touching the medicine, we're touching the gold in these situations, there will be these times where once we do that, people may not be ready for the new you, right? They may be like, oh, who are you, man? You don't do that. And it can be really easy to slip back into what I did before. So in that space, and I think you talked about it a little bit with the support, but what would you suggest to men that are going through this transition, like do this healing or do this this perspective work on a wound, and then go out into their environment and get pulled back? Like, what are your thoughts on like how men can support themselves or what they need to support their new way?
I think that what I have seen works is to find an established community or develop one yourself of folks who have that shared experience with you, who are doing this work. Because, and I'll use the example of a weekend, you just came off a weekend, go off onto a weekend and there are some great revelations and there's some self-agency and empowerment that is developed. And then you go back Monday morning into the world that remembers you up until last Friday. And that's what they expect, what they just, experienced last Friday. And it can be difficult going back into the world and trying to find support and ways to integrate that into your life and begin to practice that in your relationships, in your job, in your home life. And without support of other folks who have an understanding and a shared relationship around that experience and what you have been through, then you're pretty much out there, set a sail at sea on your own. Is it impossible to do that? No, it's not impossible, but I think that to help with the integration and support, to have folks that understand where you're at and what you've been through, it really helps to have community and integrate yourself into a community of like-spirited folks.
Yes, man.
That's truly important.
That's huge. And it's like, I'm going esoteric. Frequency. All right. Frequency, right? It's like people on a similar frequency, right? It's like, I'm a big fan of this guy, 19 Keys. He's talking a lot about like frequencies. He's got these things called high level conversations. And, when we talk about the frequency, I see that being like that circle. Like when my frequency adjusts, I'm all of a sudden going to get pulled to something closer to my frequency, something higher. If I'm without that circle, like you explained, or that community that knows my situation and wants to support me in integrating, over time, if there's nothing that's going to pull my frequency higher, my frequency is going to go lower because that's what it's more accustomed to. It's like, it's like when someone starts working out, right? Especially when we talked about self-care before. The beginning may suck. It may not. You may love it. And the thing is like because you're shifting and you're moving, you're changing, you're realigning your frequency in your all your bodies, your physical, emotional, and mental and spiritual bodies. So when we talk about that, like especially frequency, I'm curious for you, when you hear the words or phrase pure masculine frequency, what comes to mind?
When I hear the phrase pure masculine frequency, I don't know what that is. I don't know what pure masculine frequency is because human beings are so complex. And for me to be, resonating at my pure masculine frequency, then that means that I'm also in touch with the feminine frequency that exists within me as well. I don't know that I can have completely one without the other. If I'm vibrating solely on a masculine frequency, something's missing.
Right.
Something is out of balance. Something's out of alignment. And I don't know if you've ever driven a car that's pulling all the time, right or left. That's you're fighting. You're always fighting the wheel to stay on the road. I don't want to fight.
Nah, me neither. Bro, it's
I
funny
want
you
everything to be straight and true.
See, yes, exactly. And it's funny you mentioned that because I just got my car out of the shop last week for freaking rotors and alignment. So I know exactly when you're turning, it's like, what the hell? Damn, I gotta like pull this. So I want to come back to when you talk what you just said about the feminine frequency, right? Like being and knowing that part of it, and also pulling in when you talked about the other blueprints or archetypes of us. When you talked about that mystic, that magician, right? And that is the magician is the problem solver, the one that can create out of nothing, right? The one that can shift shit, that can implement change. And that is, it's said that that's on a feminine pole, right? So the creator, that flow, that openness, that the chaos, right? And the chaos is far from it being a negative aspect, because chaos is needed for growth, right? Our cells are constantly, we're all vibrating. So when it comes to that, like I'm really excited. I'm really happy that we talked to that, because I think that when men can be in that warrior, right? And they're like in that first part, they want to protect something. When they're seeing what you're talking about is about developing a different view, that's shifting into that magician. Because now I have to be able to like, like do some Dumbledore shit and like, okay, like I got to see what this is. And like magic, like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing this way. She just acted completely different, or he just acted completely different to me. That's a magician, right? And then once I have that shift and change, that's when I see like that sovereign, that king energy tapping in, which is the masculine, which is direction, which is boundaries, which is discernment, which you talked about before, that wisdom. And now we come into the lover with that new beginning, right? Yeah. Well, so the lover is like, it's the sunset or it's the sunrise. It's like something new, something being able to be curious. Like I'd never seen this thing before, right? And I think it's very interesting that for men, especially like I'm my judgment, Eldra, my judgment is like we're trained to be in that warrior, yet when it's time for us to create a new way of seeing things, looking in that magician in the West energy, that's like unheard of.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm curious, like for you, like what are there times like when you're working with your population, or even when you're in Folsom, what were the ways that you got men to connect to that creative aspect of themselves to create change, bro?
Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example from this morning. I was sitting in circle with some youngsters in New Jersey this morning.
Oh, bless up. Where in Jersey?
In where they at the training school.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Bless up. Okay.
And so the conversation went to, basically, everybody talking about they're all right, they're doing cool, they're doing good, jail is ass, I'm just biding my time, waiting to get out, waiting to go to court, waiting on a recall. Yeah. And okay, I get all of that. And, we wound up getting into a conversation and started talking about love. And started talking about what that looks like, and started naming, okay, well, what is your value? What sort of person are you? Who are you? Strip away the money, strip away, the physical components of life. Who are you? Minus those things. Right. And, a couple of youngsters started to name those things. And so then I asked them, okay, well, turn to the man next to you, look him in his face, and tell him who you are. As you're naming those positive qualities, as you're claiming those positive qualities. And it was all awkward and cats laughing and looking all down at the ground and didn't want to look at each other. I say, now, so let's notice now what this feels like, as opposed to if you were talking to that man and letting him know somebody had pissed you the fuck off and what you were going to do to handle that situation.
Yeah.
And how angry you were, and how you would let that man see that rage, how you would let that man see that fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Without breaking eye contact.
Yeah.
How you would stand firm on that, but in claiming your compassion, in claiming your love, in claiming how good of a person you are, in shining your light. You're looking down at the ground, your feet are shuffling. This feels strange. This feels, there's something wrong with that.
Right.
There's something wrong with that. And when we talk about love, and cats start talking about, well, what is love? I don't know what that is because I never got that from my dad. I never got that from my mother. Nobody ever gave me that, but I want to love my kids. Well, how do we do that if it's never been modeled for us? And if we don't have these conversations?
Man, brother, I gotta say, this is so potent because I'm in a situation with my sons right now where I'm learning, as a non-custodial dad, what intimacy is. Right?
Yeah.
And this is something, speaking of mental well-being, this is something I'm working with my therapist on, right? And my energy workers, what are the ways that I get to be intimate with my kids? Is it check in, yo, man, how's school? What's up with your teacher, man? How your friends? What's up with freaking this show that you watch and things like this? And I'm finding it's difficult, man. It's all of a sudden, Eldra, in my head, it runs through I'm supposed to be on a call with them for half hour. I got to make sure that they know I love them and all these expectations. And when I started looking at that, I was like, well, shit, man, like you said, there was this discomfort about well, I don't even know what that means. Right. And it was a very interesting piece for me when I was experiencing that. Something came to mind I wanted to ask you, especially when we're talking about love. Do you think love in our society, especially when you're talking about words matter, do you think love is overplayed, man?
I think it is overplayed. I think it is overplayed, and it's not the fault of the word. I think it is, as collectively, we have allowed ourselves to get away from, well, what does that mean?
Right. Right.
It's just like asking somebody, greeting somebody, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm fine. Okay, that's bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
I can look at you and see that that's bullshit.
Right.
But we have become accustomed to, okay, this is just a platitude with you asking how I'm doing, and I'm going to respond like this, and then we're going to move on with our day. And then the next thing you know is 12 people dead in a supermarket because somebody started their day off saying that they was fine, when in all actuality, they're not.
They're not fine.
The same thing happens with, I believe, the word love, because again, I'll go back to this young brother this morning, we were talking about love, the word love, and, he is somebody that, like a lot of us, has homeboys, gang affiliated, and we, tell our associates and cronies all the time, man, I got love for you, man, I love you, I'll die for you.
Right.
But we don't really know what that means. Don't really know what love means, because if you love me, and if I love you, I don't want you to die for me. I want you to live for me.
Right.
I want you to live for you.
Yes.
So what does that word even mean? We got to start having those discussions about what it means, because the word exists, the concept exists. Right. So now let's sit around and start talking about, okay, well, what does that mean? What does love look like for me?
Right.
What does love mean to me? And when I'm expressing it for you and to you from me, what does that mean?
Right.
And how do you receive that? What does that feel like?
Ooh, now we're about to hit another stratosphere, because when we talk about, you're talking receiving now. That's on a whole other piece, right? Because I see, I'm so I'm really appreciative of you. I adore you, man. That you are out in this world, you're out here supporting other people, and we're having this conversation, because I think this is a part of this shifting the perspective on a wound, right? Is this concept of love. Well, if this person loved me, they wouldn't do this. Or if this person loved me, we wouldn't do this. And it comes back, if I love this person, would I do that? And that challenge is like you said, what is love? And then switching on to, well, what can I receive love? Right? Because I think, especially for, I run this circle for BIPOC men on Saturdays. I find that part of being able to receive in whatever aspect we're talking about is challenging.
Yeah.
Because it's no, I want to give to you. Hey, can I give you this? No, I got it. I'm good. I don't need help. Which is a bunch of bullshit. And that's that. That's like somebody saying hey, I'm fine. No, you're not. You're far from fine, man. And you're far from receiving the help and support. That's why, coming back to what you were saying with the circle and in that support system, I think that's also a practice in men learning how to receive love.
Yeah.
And what that means, because Brother, I gotta tell you, when I was in that circle yesterday, or like when we were on the nature quest over the weekend, like these guys, like they were using love, like, and I could tell in their eyes, it was a new discovery for them.
Yeah.
From men, right? And it was wild because like it was this like, and you know the weekends, man, like they come in looking one way, vibe is one way, they leave on Sunday. You're like, who are you? Look at you, I'm so freaking proud of you. Smiling. Like one of these guys that was there on the weekend, man, he had a struggle, man. He's going through some shit, Eldra, and he stuck it out.
Yeah.
He stuck it out. He was going through a lot of health problems. And like he came in, he really wasn't talking much, blah, blah, blah. Then all of a sudden, man, like him leaving, he was like, now this was another thing that came up. And I just want to be respectful of time. But this was another thing that came up is developing belief in self.
Yeah.
So, and this is coming back to one of the things that I saw or that I took in when you were working with that man in the movie that was like, hadn't seen his kid, right? And my take on it, one of the things that made me emotional in that scene is that you had a belief in him that he had yet to have in himself, bro. Right? And you had to be that beacon to be like, yo, I see you. I see you. And I had that experience over the weekend where it was just like, I see your greatness, man. I see you. And I'm prompted and I'm inquiring on like, the gold, like what's their shine? Like how do they show up? Like, how does their shine impact? And this young man was struggling, bro. Struggling. And dude, I looked him all up in his optic stem and I'm like, yo, dude, I was like, I'm going to believe in you until you believe in yourself, bro. Because I see you. And he was like, look, bro, he was looking at me like that was love. Because he was like, it was like, have you ever been in those situations where you say something to someone and it's like when you're looking in their eyes, it's like you can tell them computing.
Yep.
Like you're like, did he just say he believes in me? I remember the last time that happened, right? And one of the things, like this young man, his father brought him into the work and his father was on the weekend. And I thought it was so powerful because this whole weekend was him stepping into that adoration, that love, that admiration, that respect part of it. And he had that for his father because his father had done the work. And brother, when he was hugging his dad, I lost it because I'm like, man, if more men had that space from a parent or from someone that loves them, things begin to change. And it's like that for whether you're in prison, whether you're in you're in corporate, it fails to matter wherever you are, right? There's a piece of it as far as like, hey, being able to receive and believe in self and being able to believe someone else until you believe it yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm curious for you, who was a person that believed in you before you believed in yourself? And actually, I'm going to come back. Was there ever a time that you failed to believe in yourself?
Yes, there was a time where I failed to believe that there was goodness in me. There was never a time that I didn't believe in my capabilities to do whatever the hell I wanted to do. But there was definitely a time when I did not believe that there was light within me. And I've always had people, in my corner who believed in me. I'm fortunate. I come from a whole functional household. So, I grew up in the house with both my parents together. They're still together today. And so they've always had a great belief in me, thank heavens. So I'm one of those who's been blessed to always have people in my corner who believe in me. And I'll take this back to that piece about love. And what does that look like? And us having those conversations. And you said it yourself where, folks can be like, well, if you love me, you wouldn't do this. If you love me, you wouldn't say that. Yeah. Well, maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. if you don't know my definition of love. If I grew up chained in a basement, being beat by my parents and being told by them, I'm doing this because I love you, and being told by them that I love you, then when I smack you across your face, yeah, I do love you.
Yeah.
Because that's what I know.
Right. Right.
I'm coming from a place and from an experience where this equates love.
Yeah.
So we got to have these conversations about what is love for us collectively. What does that look like?
Yeah. Yeah.
How are we going to express that? Because the way that I learned it might be the way that you learned it a little bit different. And then there's going to be a clash there. And then there's the space to say that, well, if you loved me, you wouldn't do this.
Right. Right.
Well, no, you don't know my experience.
Dude, man. So, man, oh, brother, I appreciate you, man. So I want to coming back. So I heard you say, like, there was a time like you failed to believe in your light. Is that what I heard, right?
That's what I said exactly.
Perfect. So who was it that helped you believe in your light until you believed in that? Who was it that believed in your light until you believed in it yourself, bro?
Well, yeah, again, I got to go back to my parents, my grandfather, Eldra Sr., my grandmother, Ella Louise, my grandfather's second wife, June PL. I had a host of folks, and the people that held me held me in a space and in a place and in a position where I could begin to see it myself was in Circle and Folsom. They held up a mirror and challenged me to look into that mirror and begin to see it in myself. And I'll name another person. She was my Qigong teacher in Folsom, Judy Trethway. I started, going in and doing movement meditation, investigating different paradigms and teachings. And I was really drawn to, Far Eastern teachings and meditations and things like that. And, I started taking classes with her, and she really saw something in me and encouraged me, actually pushed me out into the forefront to step more into my medicine, to step more into not just who I was, but who I could be, because she saw something that I didn't. And she didn't so much communicate it with words of this is what I see and this is who you are, but in the challenge. Okay, I'm going to need you to show up like this. I'm going to need you to do. I'm going to need your support around that. And all of those things were supporting me to step more into the light of who I was in that dark place.
Taking a moment to big up Judy and all the people that help others recognize the light or hold that space of recognizing light until people recognize it themselves, bro, because that's powerful. I'm happy that she was there for you, bro, because you got a bright light. You know what I mean? Like I said, you're a beacon, man. So to see the work that you're doing, and brother, the work that you put into the work and the work that you're putting out into the world is like on some tip top galactic goodness, brother. From your podcast, the TED Talk we mentioned before, just your programs, like how you're showing up. It's even like what you're saying, like being in circle with kids, like especially for young men of color, to have someone like you that has been in a place where it's like a lot of Black men may end up. It's like a lot of us, or it's like we may end up in jail, or there's a possibility of being end up being shot in this collective, and that's a narrative, right? It's a narrative. So it's like if I'm able to shift that narrative and that perspective, like I see and I hear you saying you're doing with others, like man, now all of a sudden there's like a whole nother stratosphere. Like I'm taking a shift in where I'm going and what I'm seeing. I want to check in with you about, as we start to wind down the podcast, and I'm going to have to, here we go. I'm plugging myself in. As we start to wind down this session, with everything that we talked about, Eldra, like, is there something that you would want anyone doing the work to know or integrate in their journey to shift in their perspective around their wounds, man?
The one thing that I always say and encourage folks to do, when it comes to this work, is do your own fucking work.
Bless up.
This ain't about I'm doing this, to help somebody or to save somebody else or to be there for somebody or to become some top flight facilitator, co-leader this, leader that, experience this, that's all a bunch of bullshit.
Yep.
I get it. I understand. That's that hierarchical bullshit. I'm gonna call it what the fuck it is. That's a bunch of bullshit. I do this for me.
Yeah.
And because I do this for me, spirit then moves in such a way that I'm called to go into places and show up the way that I do in whatever spaces where other people need this. They don't need me as a facilitator.
Right.
They need me to show up doing my own fucking work and being willing to look in the mirror at myself, not hold a mirror up to them,
right.
Not diagnose where they're fucked up because I'm fucked up.
Yeah.
That's what this work is for me. Yeah. And so that's, if I don't say nothing else, and if people don't walk away with anything else, it's that piece. Look at where you fucked up.
Yep.
Do your own shit. And as a part of that, what you have is a circle of one. Practice and be willing to sit in a circle of one. Sooner or later, somebody's going to want to come sit in circle with you and make it a circle of two.
Yep.
And then we'll go to 3, and then we'll grow to 4, and then we'll grow to 5. But remember, it's a circle. It's a circle for a reason.
Yes.
This ain't about some hero complex. This ain't about some savior complex. This ain't about I got the recipe and I know what you need, because I don't know what nobody else needs. I'm still trying to figure out what I need.
My hand is up.
But we can figure it out together. Yeah. While I'm cobbling together what I need, if you want to sit next to me and you cobbling together what you need, and you look over here and you see where I can use this, okay, thank you. I'm going to put this in here. And if I see something to pass over there with you in a system of cooperation because you need that, well, then, God damn it, that's what this is all about.
Yep. Man, brother. Do your work. Do your work, party people. Do your work. Man, damn, man. Listen, just real quick. So what you say resonates deeply with me, and I appreciate. I'm really vibing on your passion for this, because I get fed up with this hierarchical programming of like, here, we're right here. I'm gonna help you through, and it's like I'm gonna speak real. I've been in that space too. Like, I'm going to help them. Even when I first started going to MKP weekends, like, I'm going to shift the world by doing these weekends. Nah, bullshit. The way I'm going to shift the world is by me doing my fucking work, man. Like, that's the only way I change. That's the only way I change. And that's like, especially coming through communication. We talked about this in the Mankind Project's got this men's work, and they talk about conscious communication and levels, and they talk about level 4 communication, where when I'm vibrating on a certain way and I bring a level of communication, then all of a sudden, because I've done my work and I'm paying attention, now all of a sudden the world, the environment around me begins to shift. Yeah. And that's the power when you say the power of the circle of one, which I truly, man, I'm digging that, man, because like that's what it really comes down to. Like, even if we're in a circle with a bunch of people, it's still being able to go in and look at self and see, like, well, hold up, man, how did I show up in this situation? Right? It's like, did I apologize? Am I taking responsibility? Am I being able? Am I being accountable? It's like, am I communicating what I can and have yet to do? These are all powerful components that, like, for anyone listening, I appreciate. I hope that you're taking this in, and this can begin to change the perspective on how you're going about your work, right? I'm going to put work in quotes, right? And I'm going to say human work, because it's about working on us as a human. Eldra, man, thank you for this, brother. Thank you. Man, Eldra, before we wrap up and you share like where people can get in contact with you, is there any other comment or statement you want to make to the people before we wrap up, man?
Certainly. Know your value, know your worth, love yourself. Don't let somebody else determine or dictate your value about who you are or what you're capable of. Love yourself. Develop a relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
So that you are nice and situated on your square as you go out into the world and begin to be in relationship with others.
Brother, thank you for this time, man. I know you're a busy man. You're intentional, man. So thank you for setting the intention to have this space with me today. I'm excited for people to hear you. And I know they're seeing you in the work. Well, so I don't know who's seeing the work yet or who has yet to see the work. And I'm happy that we're in this space where they can hear like your wisdom and your truth is powerful, bro. Where can people get in contact with you, Eldra?
They can find me at insidecircle.org. That is our organizational website. And, you know, we got something on Facebook and Twitter, and I'm not really too much into all of that. Somebody else manages that. But if you go to insidecircle.org, you can get in touch with me.
Blessings, man. Blessings. You are a gift, brother. You're a gift, man. I'm honored to know you. And with everything that you're doing, everything that you've experienced, and everything you're doing going forward, man, I'm really appreciating how you show up for men. How you show up for men, man. Like it's beautiful, man. It's beautiful, bro. And the way that you take time with men, man. Like I remember seeing you on a weekend, like your eyes and your body language and how you were with each and every person that you spoke to. It's like they know that they mattered. So I really appreciate who you are, how you show up, and I appreciate that you're doing the work on yourself, which is creating a positive influence on many others, brother. So thank you for that. Thank you. We are grateful, bro.
Most welcome.
All right. Yeah, man. Blessings to you, brother. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Mankind Podcast. Damn, I really, we may have to have a part 2 because now I'm like other questions are coming up. Damn. And listen, you have any comments? Put them in the show notes, man. Actually, put them in the comment section. Show notes are going to have Eldra's information for the innercircle.org. And then also, if you have any comments or questions that you have for Eldra, then maybe we can set up a part 2 or something. Especially like as things go on and like the difference in perspectives begin shifting or continue to shift. So thank you everyone for tuning into the Mankind Podcast. This is one of your co-hosts, Paul Newell, and I am out. Peace. Eldra, any words?
Do your own work.
Word. Do your work, folks. Peace. Sitting here shaking my head, thinking about everything that was said in this time I had with Eldra. And the thing that resonates with me the most is when we started talking about integration, doing the work, getting outside of the bullshit of being some savior and really stepping into doing the work on self. Because that's when shit gets done. That's when things shift. That's when things change. And I'm so elated that we got to talk to that, because in this culture that we have, there's so much about learning. You got to do this and you got to do that. And you got to run from the wound and you got to almost worship this wound. And that's a bunch of bull. Can that work for some? Sure. And it's worked for a lot. And there's new things that we get to do for us to really turn our wounds into our strengths. Allow that wound that we perceive to be a vessel into strengthening who we are and really getting us to dive a little bit deeper into ourselves, to find that spark, those parts or spaces in ourselves that may be holding us back. And being in a supportive community to work through it and having those people in you that believe in you before you even believe in yourself. I'm ecstatic that we got to talk to all this. And if you enjoyed it, share this with people, because there are people that are going through some stuff. And they think that there's no way for them to get past their circumstance. And there is a way for them to get past their circumstance. Have them listen to this. Eldra inspired me. I think he'll inspire others as well. He does it on a regular basis. So thank you to Eldra. Thank you, Eldra, for taking this time out with me and getting and for giving us the opportunity for more people to hear your voice. It's powerful. It's powerful, man. I'm so grateful that I had this opportunity to share space with you. For those that want to know more, go to the insidecircle.org. The more notes will be in the more notes in detail will be in the show notes. Leave a comment, share, like. Listen, this is for you all. So let's share this information. Let's continue to level up. Let's continue to get better. Let's continue to break the mold that there's and establish that there's more than one way to be a man. This is Paul, one of the co-hosts of the Mankind Podcast. It's been a pleasure, all. Until next time.
This has been another episode of the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. We have been your hosts, Paul Newell, Boyson Hodgson, and myself, Brandon Clift, and we want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. If you want to find out more about today's guests and support them in their mission, you can find links to them in the show notes. Now, if you have found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, we are always grateful for a rating and review of the show on iTunes. Now, we've got to give special thanks to our back-end team, producer, editor, and audio ninja for the show, Michael J. Russer, and Don Huff, who takes care of our graphics and promotions and pretty much makes us look pretty. So, of course, thank you, Don. Now, above all else, we've got to thank you, the listener, because through your attention and your support, you have made it possible for us to let men all over the world know that they are not alone and that there is more than one way to be a man. And if something in this episode has touched you, then perhaps it is the call to action to get involved in men's work. With live trainings happening constantly and in-person trainings happening all over the world, the Mankind Project definitely has something for you. Now, if you've enjoyed the music in this episode and all of our episodes, be sure to check out Jim Donovan and the Sun King Warriors. I have links to them in the show notes. And lastly, just know, what it means to me to be a man is completely different than what it means for you. What it means for Paul, what it means for Boyson, that is the beauty of this journey. So if you are looking for guidance, support, and community as you begin to unpack and dive deeper into your men's work journey, then you know where to find us. Same place, same time, next week. Lots of love. We'll see you then.